The biggest threat to your growth isn't ignorance. It is thinking you are right. Today, we are going into one of the most important books I've read in years. Adam Grant's Think Again, not a book summary. We are going deep on 3 concepts and 7 principles that will change how you lead, starting with the most dangerous thing you carry into every room, your certainty. I spent 14 plus years as a data scientist and a consultant solving complex problems for organizations. And then I became a Maxwell certified leadership coach. And I realized the hardest problems were never the technical ones. They were the human ones. They were the identity ones. August 1949, 15 elite smoke jumpers parachute into Mann Gulch, Montana. A routine wildfire. Then the wind shifts. Within seconds, 30-foot flames are racing toward them at the speed of a sprinting athlete. The foreman, Wagner Dodge, does something none of them understand. He sets fire to the ground in front of him. His crew ignores him. 12 of the men die, some of them still gripping their tools. When investigators studied the fire, they found something that stopped them cold. Many of them, 12 men, died within 200 feet of safety. 200 feet. And they were carrying tools, packs, and gear weighing over 20 pounds. If they had dropped their equipment, they could have moved 20% faster. They would have survived, but they couldn't let go. Psychologist Carl Wake made an observation about those firefighters that has stayed with me. He said, for a firefighter, the tools aren't just equipment. They are identity. The shovel, the saw, that is what makes you a firefighter. Drop the tools and you are not fighting fire anymore. You are just a person trying not to die. So, in the most desperate moment of their lives, the very thing that defined who they were became the thing that killed them. Now, most of us will never face a wildfire, but we all carry tools. Our tools are our expertise, our past success, our deeply held beliefs about how leadership works, how teams work, how organizations change, the frameworks that got us promoted, the habits that earned us the title. And here is what I've seen. In 14 years of working with organizations and coaching emerging leaders, the moment your environment changes and you don't, those tools stop being assets. They become anchors. BlackBerry had half the US smartphone market in 2009. Mike Lazaridis was a visionary. He was certain about his tools, his physical keyboard, work-focused design, tactile input. Apple introduced glass. He dismissed it. By 2014, BlackBerry was functionally gone. Intelligence didn't protect him. Success didn't protect him. In fact, both made him more rigid, more certain he was right. That is the trap. Adam Grant calls it seizing and freezing. When the world becomes unpredictable, we grip our familiar beliefs harder. And the more successful we've been, the tighter the grip. The question isn't whether you are smart. The question is, can you unlearn fast enough? If you are leading right now or working toward it, and something about what I just described landed for you, I want you to pause and ask yourself, what tools am I still carrying that the environment no longer needs? The leader identity audit was built for exactly that moment. It helps you get clear on your direction, uncovers what is quietly holding you back, and gives you a practical path forward in under 10 minutes. The link is in the description. Download it before we go further. Because what we're about to talk about will mean more when you are honest about where you are. Now, let's go through the 3 concepts I mentioned earlier. Concept 1, the 4 mindset. When we are in difficult conversation, a hard decision, or a moment of uncertainty, we tend to fall into one of 4 modes. Grant calls them roles, but I want you to think of them as postures. The default stance your mind takes when it feels threatened. Posture number 1, the preacher. You believe you are right, and your job is to make sure everyone else knows it. You don't listen, you deliver. Every pushback becomes a congregation that needs to be converted. Posture number 2, the prosecutor. You are not trying to find the truth. You are trying to win. You are building a case. Every piece of evidence that confirms your point, you magnify. Everything that challenges it, you dismiss. Posture number 3, the politician. You are reading the room. You will say what gets applause. Beliefs aren't convictions. They are campaign promises. They shift with the audience. And then there is the scientist. That's posture 4. The scientist doesn't tie their identity to a conclusion. They tie it to a process, the pursuit of truth. The beliefs are hypotheses, no monument. New evidence doesn't feel like defeat. It feels like progress. Here is the key distinction. When a preacher gets challenged, they feel attacked. When a scientist gets challenged, they get curious. Same external event, completely different internal response. That is not a skill difference. That is an identity difference. Now, the second concept Grant talked about is cognitive blind spot and confident humility. Here is one of the most uncomfortable concepts in this book, and Grant delivers it with a kind of precision that should make all of us pause. The Dunning-Kruger effect. When you lack skill in an area, you often lack the metacognitive ability to realize you are unskilled. You don't know what you don't know, which means you can't account for it. Grant calls this Mount Stupid, the early slope where a little knowledge creates a lot of confidence. The first rule of the Dunning-Kruger Club, he writes, is that you don't know you are a member. So what is the antidote? Confident humility. Not imposter syndrome, where you doubt everything, including your ability to grow. Not arrogance, which Grant defined as ignorance plus conviction. Confident humility is the sweet spot. You trust your ability or your capacity to figure things out while you remain genuinely uncertain about whether your current approach is the right one. You are not humble about your potential. You are humble about your method. There is a story in the book about Hala Tomasdottir, an Icelandic presidential candidate who ran at 1% support. Wow. Instead of pretending she belonged, she leaned into discomfort. She used her uncertainty as fuel to work harder, to listen more, to adapt faster. She surged to a strong second-place finish. Her doubt wasn't a liability. It was her edge. That is what confidence humility looks like in practice. That is what we are building toward. Now, concept number 3, the science of changing other people's mind. If rethinking is hard for us, helping others rethink is even harder. And most of us go about it in exactly the wrong way. We become logic bullies. We pile on fact, statistics, and evidence because we believe that if someone just had enough information, they'd have to agree with us. But Grant cites research showing the opposite. When people feel their core beliefs are under attack, they don't open up. They dig in. They develop what he calls psychological antibodies. There is a more powerful approach, and it shows up in an unlikely place: public health. Doctors working with vaccine-hesitant communities tried a different method: motivational interviewing. They stopped lecturing. They started asking genuinely curious questions. They listened without judgment. And in that space, where people didn't feel attacked, something shifted. People began to find their own reasons to change. You can't force someone to unlearn a belief. You can only hold up a mirror that lets them see their own contradictions. Wisdom, Grant writes, isn't about how much you know. It is about how quickly you can unlearn. Now, let us make this real. I've worked with leaders at every level, and certain patterns come up again and again. I want to walk through 3 of them and show you exactly how the principles from Think Again apply. Scenario number 1. I think I am failing. I've coached new managers who are working harder than they've ever worked in their lives and still feel like they are losing. They care deeply. They are trying to be both firm and compassionate. But every misstep lands like a verdict on their character. Every hard conversation that goes sideways becomes evidence that they are not cut out for this. What is happening isn't incompetence. It is identity fusion. They've merged who they are with how they perform. And when performance dips, the self takes the hit. Here is Grant's first principle. Detach your opinions from your identity. Here is how I want you to hear that. Stop rooting your identity in outcomes and root it in values. Not, I am a successful manager, but I'm someone who commits to learning and to my team's growth. When you make that shift, a bad meeting isn't a referendum on who you are. It is just data. It is a hypothesis that failed. And that is exciting because it means you are now less wrong than you were yesterday. So here is what you do in such case. After a meeting that doesn't go the way you wanted, try this. Don't debrief it as a failure. Debrief it as discovery. Ask yourself, what did I learn about where the friction is? Then, if appropriate, name it to your team. I handled that rollout in a way that didn't serve you. I'm adjusting. That kind of transparency doesn't cost you authority. It builds it because people trust leaders who can learn in public. Scenario number 2, leading people who know more than you. This is one of the most common challenges I see in leaders who have been promoted out of technical roles. You walk into a room full of subject matter experts. You don't speak the language yet. And if you try to challenge their thinking too soon, they shut down. The instinct is to establish authority through expertise. That instinct will cost you the relationship. 2 principles intersect here. Build a challenge network and approach debate as dense. A challenge network isn't a support system. It is a deliberate collection of people who will disagree with you, push your thinking, and expose your blind spot. Grant argues you need disagreeable critics, not agreeable cheerleaders. And here is the reframe. Your most skeptical expert isn't your adversary. They are your most valuable asset if you position it that way. What do? Go to your most skeptical expert and say something like this. I'm not here to tell you how to do your technical job. I'm here to find the blind spot. I need you to be the person who pushes me to think again. Can you do that for me? And when you are in a debate about process or direction, don't bring a barrage of argument. Bring one strong point and a question. Here is what I'm saying. What is one thing about this approach that definitely won't work in our current environment? You turn the dynamic from win-lose to shared problem solving. That is the dance. Scenario number 3, supporting someone who is struggling without losing the project. Here is a situation I've seen play out more times than I can count. A team member is going through something difficult, personally, health-wise, at home. It is affecting their output. The project is high stakes, and the leader is paralyzed, afraid that holding them accountable feels cruel, but afraid that letting standards slip will cost the whole team. So they do nothing. And that vacuum, that absence of leadership, cost both the person and the project. Here is the principle. Create psychological safety paired with process accountability. Here is the most important distinction in this section. Psychological safety is not about being nice. It is not about lowering standards. It is about creating the conditions where people can tell you the truth. And process accountability is not the same as outcome accountability. You are not holding them responsible for struggling. You are holding them responsible for how they navigate the struggle. Here is what you do. Create the space for honesty first. I want you to know that if you are struggling, I'd rather know than not know. We can work with this reality. What I can work with is a problem I don't see coming. That is safety. Then move to the process. Because this project matters to the whole team, let's look at your workload together. What are the 2 options that protect the project's integrity while respecting where you are right now? That is accountability. You are not judging the outcome. You are holding them into a rigorous process for handling a hard situation. That is what great leaders do. Here is what I want you to carry out of this video. Think Again is a book about rethinking, but at its core, It is a book about identity. The firefighters who couldn't drop their tools didn't die because of a mistake. They died because their tool had become their identity. Dropping the shovel meant ceasing to exist as the person they understand themselves to be. And confident humility, the core concept of this book, isn't primarily a cognitive strategy. It is a character trait. It is who you have chosen to be. If you are someone who roots their identity in being right, in having the answers, in maintaining certainty, rethinking will always feel like a threat. It will always feel like loss. But if you are someone who roots their identity in the pursuit of truth, in learning, in growth, in serving your team well, then being wrong isn't an attack on your identity. It is proof that it is working. That is the inside-out shift. And it is the same shift I talked about in the video on why smart leaders fail, because they carry a version of this exact pattern. I will link it at the end. Watch that next. If this resonated, and I think it did, then you are ready for the leader identity audit. This is a free resource I built for leaders who are working hard but need to get honest about what is actually holding them back. The link is in the description. Download it. Do it today. Because the leaders who grow fastest aren't the one with the most information. They are the ones willing to examine what they already believe. I will see you in the next. God bless.